Good morning and welcome to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I'm your host, Trillia, and I am so thrilled to be here today and every Saturday morning. It is almost May, which means one thing for me. I am about to send my son off to college. That is right. Yes, it's here. Sound the alarm. This is not a drill. I imagine there's so many of you listening who are in the same season, in the same boat. It is just a different, unique season. This is my first kid who will be heading out of the home and into the world, really. And we were warned that the days are long, but the years are short. I think that's the saying. The days are long, but the years are short. And boy, is it true. Parents of young kids, it feels like a cliche until you are in it. I mean, it's true. I don't know if there's anything that has ever gone faster than these past 18 years. Yet, the closer we are getting to it, the more I see how the Lord has been preparing me all along. That doesn't always make it easier, but I can see where God was helping me learn to let go of my perceived notion of control and entrust my kids to Him. I know that I am not alone. In fact, I have a friend who has been there and done that and is currently launching her last child as well. Christiane Bouile is the author of several books, including the Bible study, Delighting in God's Law, Old Testament Commands, and Why They Matter Today. She teaches and disciples women in her home church. She also trains Bible teachers through ministries such as the Charles Simeon Trust, Bible Equipping, and TGC Women's How to Teach the Bible cohort. She and her husband, Thabiti, celebrated 30 plus years of marriage and over 25 years of pastoral ministry experience. And her birthday was yesterday. So it is such a joy to have my friend Christy on the phone. Christy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, my sister. Thank you. It's always a joy to be here with you, and any chance I get to hang out with my sister Trillia in person or virtually is a joy.
It
Thank
is
you.
so fun. It is so fun. And I am, you've been there, you've done that. I guess one of the questions I would have is, has it gotten easier, or now that it's the last one, is it a little scarier? How are you dealing?
No, it's not easier. This is the hardest one
Yeah.
because I have three children and both my girls are, grown and gone, as they say. And so now it's just my son. He's the last one, and it's definitely the hardest launch of a child from, being um, a teenager at home to a young adult going off to college and those sorts of things. I'm feeling all the feels, as they say, thinking about moving into our empty nester season. Hope, I guess, some people say they come back, and I've seen that with a lot of my friends. So, so we might not be complete empty nesters forever, but at least for this next season coming up, we anticipate being empty nesters.
That is so funny. I have had a lot of people who are older who've been there, done that, and have said, "Oh, don't worry, they'll be back." And you think that, but you never know. I mean, when I graduated, I did go back, but it was for one summer. But I
Mhm.
left and I never turned back. I was gone. And so I don't know. I think every child is probably different. But you did say
Yeah.
this one's the hardest. Is it just because this is the true empty nest stage?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know how it is as a parent. We've tried to be intentional about making our home um, more marriage centered than child centered. But even with those intentional efforts, children take a lot of time, a lot of energy. A lot of my day is spent thinking about what's going on in my children's lives. Even with just one in the home, there's sports, there's school events, there's friends, there's transporting here and there. Even now that my son is driving, it's knowing where he is and what he's going to be spending his time doing. There's just a lot of my day that's ordered around what's happening with my children. And so, thinking about coming into this next season, not having that fill up my headspace, it feels a little
Yeah.
disconcerting, just a little, I don't know, it feels a little sad, honestly, because I think,
Yeah.
even with the intentionality, there's a lot of identity uh, that's built around being a mom, being a parent. Not that I won't continue being a mom or parent, of course, but just those things that people typically identify with what a mom does or who a mom is. It does feel a little sad to be losing that rhythm of life, not cheering him on at games,
Oh.
not going to school events, not volunteering, not doing those things that have been a big part of my identity as a mom for so many years.
Mm. No, that makes a lot of sense to me because I think that when our energy and focus is on a certain thing, you can't help but that be a part of your identity. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so for that to be taken, and taken sounds strong, ripped
No,
away,
it's a
but
valid word. Yeah.
yeah, it's ripped away. No,
Yeah.
it's a transition that
It
make
is.
yeah. Even last night, so one of my kids is at a choir event. I don't know what it is exactly because, but that's what happens your senior year. You're like, okay,
Right.
dude, you're in Pigeon
Another
Forge
thing.
on a trip.
Yeah.
Okay, enjoy. And
Yeah.
so he's competing or doing something on a choir trip, and then another. We went to her friend's track meet, and then a bunch of them went together, and they had a sleepover or did whatever. And Thurn and we were like, oh, um, what do you want to do? And then,
Exactly. Yeah.
yes, and then I we started talking, and he was saying how he wants to really eat lighter when the kids are gone, and I was like,
Mhm.
lighter. So what does that mean? Like
Yeah.
salad, or what? Because I am the home cook. He does not. That's not his area of expertise, and so. So I cook. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, so smaller meals or lighter meals or what. And so that's kind of the things we're thinking about is like, what
Yeah.
will we eat? We'll have to be really intentional and start thinking about being
Yeah.
together and it's yes. So all that to say, I completely understand. And I imagine that there are listeners right now who get it, who are listening and thinking, yeah, I'm about to launch a kid. And Christy has been there, done that. She's already launched two, and I'm in the midst of it. So I can only have empathy and lament with you. But if you have a question,
Mhm.
give us a call. The phone lines are open 877-548-3675, 877 live 675. I would love to chat with you. Christy would love to chat with you. Ask us a question about the launch or share your experience. Again, 877-548-3675 or 877 live 675. So, Christy, I do have a question about how God has prepared you. So, how, and if you can maybe think back to that first child, how did God prepare you to launch that first child?
Mm, that's a good question. I think, really being, really watching other parents as, um, parents who are, ahead of us and who already had children who, had left home and transitioned to their next phase of life, talking to them, watching them, um, getting advice and counsel from them as far as, things to, look out for or things to consider. And so I think one of the things that really helped me was to remember that, one, our children are not really ours.
Yeah.
We are stewards of the good gift of children. God has entrusted our children to us. And so trying to have the mindset that they don't ultimately belong to me. they ultimately belong to the Lord, and that I need to be stewarding um, these relationships in a way that honors Him, and in a way um, that helps me to present them back to Him, right, for His kingdom purposes. And so, having the mindset of raising children is a way to steward God's gift and to help them not like reflect on me as a parent, but to reflect Christ in the world. So that's helped me, and to know that when they make that transition, that as we're as our children are growing, that we're trying to raise young adults. We're not trying to raise mini me's, we like to talk about mini me's when the, little girls are small and cute and they look just like mom, or the little boys and they look just like dad. And, we talk about the mini me's, but we're not really raising mini me's, right? We are raising image bearers of Christ. So I have tried to keep that in mind and to recognize that with my first, is that, wow, she's doing exactly the thing that she's supposed to be doing in this season of life, and that's a good thing. So trying to step back from the mindset of maybe what I'm losing, that proximity and one-on-one relationship in the way that I had been so accustomed to, and really embracing that this is a next season for her. She's excited about it. I should be excited about it. And just growing together and figuring out how our relationship can continue to flourish, even though it looks differently than what I've kind of told myself I was able to manage for 18 years, right? So there's also that sense of loss of control and loss of influence. And so trying to figure out how to not hold on to any semblance of control, but also
Mhm.
how to maintain a vibrant, growing, intimate relationship with my children. And interestingly, I feel like we've grown closer as
Mm.
they've launched out into the next phase of life. Whereas I feared that we might kind of grow apart a little bit and be more distanced, even though we were distanced physically. I feel like for both of my kids who have launched out, our relationship has grown and gotten deeper over the years.
Well, we have so much more to discuss. Even from that, I was thinking, okay, I have lots of follow up questions. More when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I am talking with Christy Anyabwile, and we are talking about launching kids. And, Christy, before the break, you had a lot of really helpful things to share about how God prepared you. And some of the things that you said, which I just cling to even now, is that we're they're made in the image of God. You didn't say it this way, but I'm saying it. They're made in the image of God. God's created them
Mm.
to
Mhm.
He's created them, right? And so often
Mhm.
when they're younger, we say we have little mini me's. People say that about my
Mhm.
daughter. She's your mini me. But they're
Mhm.
actually individuals created
Yes.
by God with different interests, different, or maybe even similar, because we do have similar interests, but
Mhm.
she is who God's made her to be.
Mhm.
And my son is who God's made him to be. And so
Mhm.
that kind of mini me raising and then raising kind of independent kids who are um, going off on their own and learning to work and to uh, explore what God has for them. That kind of independence that's what I think a lot of us kind of deal with. So it's a kind of a two-part question. How do you raise kids that are independent? And then how
Mhm.
do you let go?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, first of all, we do need to say that I'm definitely not an expert in any of this conversation we're having
Sure.
today.
None of
This
us
is
are.
very
None of
much
us are.
an experiential, uh, fly by the seat of your pants, depend on God's grace kind of conversation. But I think one thing I have learned is that you can't let go like right before they're getting ready to, move away from home or, graduate from high school. Like you can't start to let go at that point. Letting go really does start from the time they're even infants and toddlers, right? And so I think sometimes, and maybe it's just me, I can hold on to control, as I said earlier. But I do think it's common for parents to want to just kind of hold on to every aspect of our kids' lives and mold them and shape them in a particular way. And I think we just have to make room for independence. You have to let their little fingers go a little bit when they're
That's
just
true.
learning to walk, so they can learn what it feels like to balance on their own, to do that little bouncy bouncy up and down before they take that little first wobbly step. So growing in independence has to start really early. And we've tried to give our children opportunities to have more and more independence and responsibility as they've gotten older. And so it's not, you don't just let go at that one point. And so a few things, again, when they're toddlers or infants, finding things that they are able to do on their own without mom or dad's help. I even had one of my kids were like, "Mommy, I can do it by myself. You don't need to help me. I can do it by myself." So even our kids, they want independence. They want ways that they can figure things out on their own. And that's not a bad thing. That's
Yeah.
actually a really good thing because one, we're teaching them not to be dependent on us. But two, we need to also be helping them to learn how to be dependent upon the Lord. So even while we want them to grow in a degree of independence in terms of um, being able to do things on their own, we don't ever want them to have the sense that all of life is truly on their own. That the one that we want them to be
Mm.
most dependent on all at all times is the Lord Jesus Christ. And so having that balance of giving them growing senses of responsibility, and parents do that in different ways. With my kids, double digits are we're kind of big in our house. So once you hit double digits, you turn 10 and above, everybody does their own laundry. You do your own laundry. I have not done my children's laundry, like, well, my last one now. Yeah, since he was 10 years old. So we
Hmm.
just did a college visit a few days ago, and one of the tour guides was telling us, she's an RA, a resident assistant in her university, and she said that we have a workshop at the beginning of the school year to teach students
That's
how to do
perfect.
laundry. And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, but again, it's just a simple way to practice, like, how can I help my child grow in having a level of independence, being able to make decisions on their own. Even this big decision that my son is making right now, we want to guide him, we want to pray with him, we want to help him to see pros and cons and consequences and those kinds of things. But we're really trying to make this decision, even if it's not the one that we would necessarily make, his own in terms of where
Hmm.
he wants to go to college. And I know the 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 opportunity, and we talked about this before, Trillia, before we came on, but it's a blessing for our children to have choice, to have
Yes.
options, to be
Yes.
able to decide. And as he steps into adulthood fully, we want him to own this decision as one that he has made and feels comfortable with. And he doesn't feel like it was dictated to him, by us or anyone else. So, and it doesn't have to be that. It can be, a thousand different things. But I'm just
Hmm.
saying, having some intentionality about, okay, is this a place where we need to make the decision for him? Or is this a place where it's good for him to make the decision, and it's even good for him to have the um, option of making, a decision that we wouldn't think is our favorite,
Sure.
but that
Yeah.
it's a way that the Lord uses to sanctify him, to grow him, to teach him in ways that he wouldn't be taught if we just made the decision for him.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I want to go back to say I am really grateful that the Lord gives us opportunities towards allowing that kind of growing in independence and freedom to a certain degree. That we have stepping stages, like you even
Mm,
I've never thought about how letting your toddler go and run and play on a playground, that is one step towards that independence that they are going to um they're going to experience. And
yeah,
so I think that is just an absolutely um just it is helpful to remember that it doesn't all of a sudden happen one day. I also
yeah.
experienced this the moment that moment I saw my oldest drive off on his own. I just thought,
Yes.
woo. So it's amazing to me. I'm
Yeah.
talking with Christy Onyebuile, and we're talking about launching kids. If you have a question, call in if you are in this launching stage, or if you have a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Have some wisdom for listeners? Give us a call, 877 548 3675 or 877 Live 675. Again, it's 877 548 3675. So, Christy, I wonder. I'm going to change this conversation just very very slightly
Mhm.
because we're kind of all talking about the American kind of
Mm,
idea of community and launching. Now I have
yeah.
done zero research and but I do understand it that there are lots of communities that don't quite do it like this. It's
It's
they're a
true.
little bit more with their families. They live together, they stay together. And so I do wonder for is there any aspect of that that seems appealing to you or have you ever thought about that? How this idea of launching and going out and finding your own I wonder if it is like the American thing or I don't know. I should have done some research before I asked this question.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there is, yeah, but you have lived in a different country, and I don't
Mhm.
know what the Cayman Islands was like. So, have you seen that? And what are your thoughts? Have you even given that any thought?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I have not done any research myself as well, but I was talking with one of my daughters about this recently, actually. So, again, um, my husband and I have been really praying, thinking, strategizing, being so intentional about um, this next season of life that we're going into. We have lots of ideas and plans and I think it's just, the BD's way of trying to make me not so sad and look forward to a few fun things as we move into our empty nester season. But as we've been talking about, what might this next season look like for us as parents? Um, and we were talking to one of my daughters about it. She said, well, maybe you guys should also kind of consider or think about cultures that don't have that independent mindset and where families do stay together long term and children
Mm,
don't leave the home and it's more of um, a communal experience of integrated families. And so I actually love that. I do think it's somewhat of a Western ideology. Uh, I think it's more so a Western ideology, um, but I think there are many cultures where it is common for families and multiple families to live together um, and not be so spread out, disconnected, independent. Honestly wish we were more like that. I used to tell
yes.
I used to tell my kids like, you know what? We're just gonna buy a bunch of land somewhere. We're gonna have a house and you guys can just build your houses on the same land and we'll just all stay together. And people do that even in the US. And you mentioned the Cayman Islands. It's there are places where it's like that as well. And so we've seen families who have like maybe a main house and then an apartment or something off to the side or some other way of living together where there's still maybe a degree of independence but they cook together they eat together they fellowship together often um, and then I have friends as well who even, they're grown and gone, as I mentioned earlier, but their families maintain connection, at least weekly, if not more, and particularly around meals and special occasions. And so while we're talking about launching and independence and this, I think the idea that we have in mind is that our kids are going to be gone somewhere far away and they're going to be so disconnected from us and we're going
Yes.
to hardly ever see them again. But that's not the case for lots of people. And so I think if there's a way to have proximity and a degree of independence, but also have that communal living, that's amazing.
We should do
I
it.
love it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
All
let's do
right.
it.
Let's do it. More when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. I'm talking to Christiane Buile. We're talking about launching kids. The phone lines are open and they are ringing. So give us a call, 877-548-3675 or 877-LIVE-675. If you have a question or a comment about launching, we'd love to hear from you. Again, 877-548-3675 or 877-LIVE-675. Deborah from Cleveland, what's your comment?
Oh, good morning. I've enjoyed the conversation. I have sent 2 children off, and one is a boomerang, so that is a real thing. And I wanted to support your comment about other cultures doing more community living. I think one of the reasons why in America this independence thing is so big is because I think we kind of do it backward. We do this very dependent thing while they're younger. And then at 18, we kind of throw them out there hoping that they do okay. Whereas in other cultures, it seems like they have more independence and more responsibility in the home while they're growing up. Whereas we tend to coddle and do a lot for our children. And then at 18, we're kind of flustered sometimes. Also, it's very different being a single parent and an empty nester because you don't have a marriage to focus on anymore. And some of us are divorced because we didn't choose it. It just happened to us. And so when that child is getting ready to leave, it leaves a very, very, very big hole. And so you do need to start preparing for what is life going to look like when this child or these children are no longer the focus of my life. And then the last thing I wanted to support you all on is something that I didn't do and I wished I had, was having the child really make the choice of where they wanted to go, be it the fact that this is a family school that we've all gone to, this is a heritage school, a legacy school, letting that child really choose where they want to go. And in my case, if they go and they decide that's not what they needed or it's not working, allow them to leave.
There was so much in that, Deborah. I think you should just stay on the line and be a part of the conversation. There's just a lot of wisdom. I can hear the wisdom coming out of your mouth. Yes. Christy, do you have any comments for Deborah? Also, Deborah, I want you to stay on the line because I would love to give you Christy's Bible study, Delighting in God's Law. Yes. And so you can enjoy delighting in God's law, reading through the Old Testament commands and why they matter. So stay on the line, and my producer, Karen, will make sure to give that to you. But Christy, do you have any thoughts about what Deborah shared?
Oh man, Miss Deborah, thank you so much for sharing so much wisdom. And, I feel that hole a little bit already, and my son hasn't quite left. So I can imagine what that feels like for you as a single parent. And my heart does go out to you in that. But yes, I agree with everything that you said in that regard. And I think I love what you said about when our children are younger. In some cultures, they they give them a large degree of independence when they're younger, and it seems like the reverse happens a lot of times in our culture, and there are a lot of reasons for that, and it also there's regional things, whether you grow up in an urban area in a city, or whether you grow up kind of in the country where there's a lot more space and room to grow and roam. So I think there's a lot of factors that play into that, but I do think it's wise for parents to be thinking, even while their children are younger, like I think about children who they're doing laundry when they're 4, or they're helping mom take clothes to the river to to wash, or they're helping to farm their
Yeah.
parents' land, or those kinds of things. So those cultural dynamics that come into play that um, grant children different degrees of independence when they're younger. So I do think it's wise for us to be thinking about that when our children are younger, and growing in that independence as they launch out or as they stay at home and help in the
Yes.
home. Maybe they help with an aging grandparent, or a parent who's ill, or a sibling with a disability, or those kinds of things. So there's so many ways that community living can be a blessing to families.
Yes, absolutely. Deborah, thank you so much for your call. And one of the things that she said that I just stood out to me was that she also realized there were some things that she wished she had it or had done, such as giving her child, freedom to choose a college,
Mm.
and which is interesting, to change or drop out when it was potentially needed. So I have a question for you, Christy. Is there a time when you, or is it not necessary a time, but you've already launched too? Is there
Yeah.
anything that you wish you would have done that you didn't do with those two that maybe you're implementing now with your third?
Mm. That's a good question. I mean, lots of things. um, I think we're just in a interesting phase of, and we're talking a lot about college, and I know not every student goes to college, and I don't believe that college is necessarily the best option for every child. Um, So maybe thinking about vocations or trades that could be either added to a college education, or another option. So for my son right now, this is one thing I'm doing for him, that we're doing with him, that we didn't do with our older two, is he's actually, while he's preparing for university, he's also studying for his real estate license. So, kind of having another interest that's not necessarily dependent on a college education that he can pursue as an interest for career options later. That's one thing. Um,
That is,
I
I'm
think,
pausing you.
yeah.
That is
Mhm.
really interesting. And I'm going to
I
adopt
could,
that for my daughter.
yeah.
That's fascinating.
For
Carry on.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's helping him to think about is how to pay for a college education. I mean, the cost of schooling is so astronomical and
Yes, it
expensive.
is.
It's really hard. And I always tell my kids, I'm like, hey, we don't have any generational wealth or anything like that. So I can't we can't like completely pay for your college education, but we can help you get in. So once you get in, we have to think creatively about how to pay for it. And I think I speak for a lot of parents in that regard, where their life circumstances haven't been one that they could contribute a lot to their students' college education. And so that's one of the things that he's been thinking of, like, how can I help to be paying for college while I'm in college, and have good gainful employment that allows me not to be in debt, or not to be as much in debt when I
Hmm.
graduate. So that's one thing I think I would have liked to think more about with my older two before
Hmm.
they left. And I think another thing is, just finding ways to engage them more in, well, I don't know. I think I was going to say finding ways to engage them more in their place in local, what's happening in their local communities. So not just community service, quote unquote, but actually local engagement in
Yeah.
things that are happening in your community, being involved in governance issues, or just being aware of how politics and things like that work.
Getting
Just so
them
that you can be,
involved.
yeah, being
Yeah.
involved, educated citizen in your local community.
I love that. I love that. Well, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call, 877-548-3675. More when we return. Welcome back to Living by Faith with Trillia Newbell. It has been such a fun conversation. We have one segment left, which breaks my heart. We could talk about this all day, and our phone lines are ringing. Yes. So you can give us a call, 877-548-3675 or 877-LIVE-675. We'd love to chat with you about launching kids. We had a question Jenny asked, and I am going to attempt to ask her question for you. I'm just going to find it here. But in essence, she asked, she has a daughter with an adult daughter, 3 kids, and her husband and her aren't really on the same page. So her husband, she said, might be a little bit more of an enabler. And so what do you do when you're not on the same page and you're trying to launch kids? So your husband and wife not on the same page trying to launch kids. How would you encourage them?
Oh, girl, I thought you was going to answer it.
No.
No, that is a really helpful. I mean, it's a really good question that could be helpful for a lot of people. Probably the number one piece of advice that we've received recently that might speak to this particular question is, especially when you have an adult child in the home, and you're also your grandkids, is asking the question of your spouse, what are ways that we can show concern but not make ourselves responsible? And that has been like the biggest piece of advice that we've gotten recently in regards to our kids. Like, as they're growing and moving away and having their own lives and getting married and all of these kinds of things, the relationship dynamic does change. So as a parent who wants to be involved and provide godly wisdom and counsel, I need to recognize that there are many things that come up in their lives that I should rightly be concerned about, but not hold myself responsible for the outcome or a particular conclusion or a particular course of action. And so putting the onus back on our children that way. So I think having that conversation with your spouse to say, hey, it's beautiful that you want to be so involved and helpful and those kinds of things. But do you think that there's room for us to show concern, but to step back in our sphere of responsibility
I think
for
that's really
our
wise.
daughter and her children? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. Give them space to be the adults they are and communicating with each other, asking good questions. Susan from Chicago.
Exactly.
You have a comment. You're on the line.
Oh, hi. Thank you for the program. I have launched 3 children and feel the pain. I got in the car with the last one. She went running off happily. And I said to my husband, take me to the nearest hospital. My heart is broken.
Exactly.
It hurts to launch your children. It just hurts.
It does. It does. Okay.
Amen. It
Susan,
does.
stay on the line and we will make sure to get you delighting in God's law. So stay on the line. And you're right. It does.
It does.
It's painful. I think that's
Mhm.
something that we just have to recognize is that sometimes our hearts will break. Jennifer, Ohio, you have a comment.
Hi. Yeah, I think this discussion is so needed, so valuable. I can't believe I turned the radio on at the perfect time. Thank you so
Mm.
much. Two comments and then a question. One is about the comment on creatively paying for college. I have one child who is launching well and did that. He's a freshman in college and surprised us with a link on Amazon. He wrote a book to help pay for college. He wrote it
Wow.
as
Yes.
a surprise. It's called
That's amazing.
Investing for Teens by
That's so
Benjamin
cool.
Maybaum. He just surprised us with a link to this book. I thought he needed it for
Yeah.
class. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I want to help pay for college. And
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
I'm like, when I see the link, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's his name on the front, Benjamin Maybaum, and it's called Investing for Teens. I'm like,
I
you
love
surprised
it.
me. And then a comment regarding local governance and getting your kids involved. I'm a big proponent of scouting. Whether or not they make it to Eagle Scout, I have one who did, one who didn't. But the involvement in the community, the service, the leadership growth, the attending council meetings. It is a great program, and I'm a proponent of that. The question and a comment to the last person said your heart can get taken. Can also be really a heart issue when your child is not doing well. So my older one
Yeah.
Yeah.
is not launching well, was not thriving, brought him home. He lost a full tuition scholarship. And now he cannot seem to make the next step. Like, what is that? He can't seem to move. And my heart is just full of anxiety often. My heart is in my chest. So you have both types of feelings. And any thoughts about how to help a child to launch when he's kind of stagnant?
I love this
Anyway.
question. Jennifer, this is a really important point because
Yeah.
we have been kind of talking about things going well and launching well, but the
Yeah.
reality is
Yeah.
it's not a fairy tale and things get
Yeah.
hard. So Jennifer, I want to pray for your son. Stay on the
Thank you.
line so that we can make sure to get you Delighting in God's Law by Christiana Buile. And so, Christy, do you have any tips and encouragement for her heart? I think that's the first and most important thing.
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about this with the previous question as well. And that we keep saying it hurts, it's hard, our hearts are broken. And sometimes we say that as if that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's okay to grieve. And I was telling my husband and a couple other people, I said, it has actually helped me to embrace grief as a part of this process of launching our children and recognizing that that it does feel like a loss in some ways. And if I try to kind of stuff back the reality of of grief that I feel, then I'm not actually being honest with myself, and I can't actually um, heal in the way that I need to heal, or even move forward in the ways that I feel like the Lord is causing me to, calling me to move forward. So I think, yes, expressing grief. And so, Jennifer, my heart does go out to you. And I pray that the Lord would give you wisdom and how to tenderly care for your child as they're trying to transition and figure out what's best for them next. I also want to say that I don't assume that for all of my children, because of, they grow and their interests are changing and those kinds of things, I'm not necessarily assuming they're all gonna finish. They're gonna start and go through smoothly and, and finish in the way that I hope and desire. And so making space that it's not a bad decision if college just wasn't for you or just is not for you right now. And you have the freedom and space, and I love you the same. And I don't believe that you're doing something wrong or bad by stepping away from that and really prayerfully figuring out where your interests really lie and where the Lord would have you in the next season of life. So I think just dealing tenderly with your child in that way and letting them know that it's actually okay. And we can, again, I'm going to show concern, not be fully responsible, but help guide you in this next process.
Absolutely. And if I could just pray real quick, because
Yes.
there might be something else going on. So Lord, I pray
True.
that you will comfort Jennifer. God, if there is anything that her son is battling, if he is struggling in his faith that kept him from going, I pray that you would reveal yourself to him, that you would draw him to yourself, God. I pray that he would know your will, God, and which is to submit his life to you, Lord. And I pray that he would experience abundant grace, God. You are a God who loves to pour out grace and mercy and help in time of need. I pray that you would do it for him now. Give Jennifer peace. Help her to entrust her life and his life unto you. Lord, I pray that for all of us, God, who have been listening, that we would know that you are good and sovereign and you desire to care for the kids. You care for them. You love them more than we do. God, may that bring comfort and peace to us. Amen. Thank you so much, Christy, for being on the show. It's
always
awesome.
a joy. Always too short.
Also, thanks to the behind the scenes team at Moody Radio, my producer, Karen Hendren, my associate producer, Lisa Jimchi, my engineer, Merle St. James, and Titus on the phones. To hear today's program again, you'll find it at livingbyfaithradio.org or on the Moody Radio app. You may also connect with us through all the social media apps. Living by Faith is a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.